Good morning. Hey, everybody. Good to see you today. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Tim. Good to have you here. This week, and Vicky's here. Good morning from South Dakota. We've got all over the country today. I love it. We need some East Coast people to balance out the Western and Central. Good to see you guys this morning. It is hot and sunny here, back to warm. Last week was an anomaly. So I sat down this morning and I'll tell you in a minute, but I hurt my back. And so I'm sitting on a blanket this morning. And for some reason, I kept the last few weeks, ever since the solstice, the sun has been the shade has been covering me when I get started. And this morning, it just seemed like it was moving slower and slower and slower. And all of a sudden I looked down when I hit go and I was like, hey, it is actually back to where it's supposed to be. Thank goodness it wasn't like a sun anomaly this morning. And so I'm sitting in the shade, but it is very hot and sunny out in front of me. I know, Joanna, somebody said they had 100-degree day coming, and thankfully we aren't there at this point. But okay, sorry. It's going to be one of those days, I think. Focus, Michelle. All right, so this week I have been sitting with an unexpected no that shook my plans. And so I've spent some time in this uncertain middle, not planning forward for the next thing, but looking backwards. Hey friends, welcome to Field Notes from the Gravel Road. I am Michelle Hill, and each Saturday I come to you here porch side for a set apart moment at the intersection of faith and creativity and becoming. It is a pause, a moment that we can sit and realign. Wherever you're listening from, I am so glad that you're here. Today is the second episode on the series of about navigating change. Last week I talked about how I was hoping for a grant that would set the course of grace on the gravel road for the next 18 months, but I did not get that grant. And so I'm dealing with some disappointment, but it gives me a great opportunity to work through this in-between and uncertain place in real time with you. Now, I do realize that this kind of in-between time almost never follows the kind of timelines that we prefer. So we're just going to see how it goes over the next few weeks and see if I can kind of contain it within this month of topic that we're working on. I'm using a framework that is from a Limina Creative course. That's a sister company of mine. And the course is called Rediscover You. It'll be available, I think, next year sometime. And the process goes like this. It's root, remember, release, reveal, and return. It's a way to redefine identity when we get to a point where we're looking in the mirror and we're asking, who even am I? Wow, guys, I screwed up my notes here. Okay, so root. Root is what we did last week, essentially. It's grounding and naming the situation that we're in and performing what I think of as triage. I didn't really go through the framework part last week. Last week, we mostly talked about the situation with the grant and we prayed together. Creatively, it looks like creativity as ritual and observation. It's noticing and naming. In tomorrow's Limina workshop, we're going to practice a 3-part ritual, and that is one root activity. Another thing I'm trying to do is make sure that I am physically taking care of myself, eating and exercising and sleeping, so that I can let my nervous system help me cope. Unfortunately, I stumbled this week in my garden. I stepped on a paver. It wasn't stable, and I lost my balance. Now, thankfully, for my daylilies' sake, I did not crash into the bed and flatten them all. But I did come down really hard on one leg and jammed my back. I've been basically struggling with that ever since for the last, I don't know what it's been, 3 days now or something like that. I've been like, that's all I can deal with is that trying not to push through that pain, but to get done what I have to do and let that be enough. Another root activity I use to process this disappointment is a journaling process. So 4 days in a row, I explored how I was responding to the news emotionally. I took some time to name the feelings that I was feeling. And some of the things that does is it drops the stress chemistry about the event, turns raw emotions into words or images or doodles, however you typically respond. And it turns down the amygdala response in our brain, turns on the prefrontal cortex. And it also timestamps the event. It becomes something that has happened instead of something that is replaying constantly on a loop in the present moment. I didn't cover that a lot last week because I was kind of introducing, I was right in the middle, it had just happened. And so I just wanted to highlight it here. That would be my first step. So we're on step 2 this week, and it is called remembering. This week we're talking about that part of the framework where we honor the story that's come before. And whenever we talk about remembering and about looking back, I want to be clear that this is not regression. We're not trying to squeeze back into old shapes. You've grown, you've changed, you're not who you were, and that's good. But inside this change, whatever is going on with you, there's often a thread that runs through it all, a core truth, a creative spark, a part of you that hasn't disappeared and that you want back, part of that you want to bring with you into the next thing, the next phase. And the work of remembering isn't about undoing who you've become. It's about honoring the continuity of who you have always been and reclaiming the parts of you that have retreated due to internal or external circumstances. Remembering work doesn't just apply to personal identity. It also matters when your work or your calling hits an unexpected wall, like losing this grant. When it fell through, I did not make any decisions right away. I did the root, the triage step, because from there, I was in a much better place to process the uncertainty of feeling disconnected. So here are some things I've been asking myself in this remembering phase. What do I remember from Grace on the Gravel Road that got buried in the long time that I took off and in the excitement of the grant that I want to bring forward with me? What was the deeper idea that I was trying to carry through that proposal, that grant proposal? What mattered enough for me to spend a week building it? And where did I connect to things that I've been dreaming about for years? What was the part of early Grace on the Gravel Road that resonated most with me and with others? And here are some conclusions that I came to. Like I said, this doesn't follow a strict timeline. You can't just say, I'm going to do this for the next week and then I will move on. It doesn't really work like that. However, I wanted to give you some initial thoughts. I still want to create a space for creative, spiritual formation. I still feel drawn to that intersection of God and art making and becoming. And from before, I am still drawn to writing and to helping believers grow their day-to-day experiential relationship with Christ. That's actually where Grace on the Gravel Road very first began. Not hooked to creativity, but in a kind of a quiet time. How do we spend time experientially with God every day? And one of the things that was the very purpose of the original live stream when we started in the pandemic back in 2020, some of you were with me back on that very first live stream. And that was the idea of encouraging others. And encouraging others is what I learned in that time. Far than just saying, go, you get it. It's much different than what I thought it was. That's still on the table. And finally, the praying scripture came out last week as a thread that I want to pull forward as well. So while the form may change, the thread is still strong. And remembering that before we rush into reinvention helps me respond from a place of calling, not reaction. So I'm holding on to the reminder from Romans 11:29, for God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. The form may shift, the funding might disappear, but the thread of calling is still there. I still want this work to matter for eternity. Now, the world will tell you to reinvent yourself as if every season of life requires a full overhaul, new aesthetic, new routine, new purpose. And reinvention does have its place. I have done my share of that. But it is only one way forward. Sometimes the deepest transformation, especially during uncertain seasons, comes from returning, not escaping. Not a brand new identity, but a homecoming in a way, a reweaving of what still matters. So today I want to ask you, what have you always loved that's gone quiet? What have you always loved that's gone quiet? Maybe it's something simple, making music, or writing letters by hand, or baking bread on slow weekends. Maybe it's something deeper, a curiosity or a boldness, a voice that you used to trust. try not to think of it as going back, but instead we are reclaiming this thread because that thread can be pulled to the surface again. It can be strong and visible and important again and connected to who you are becoming moving forward. So here's a metaphor to think about your creative identity. If you know me, this makes sense, as an antique quilt. It's been stitched together over time. Some patches are bright and some are worn thin. I have a collection of antique quilts, and some areas still look new and some areas of many quilts are threadbare, worn thin. Some are stitched over entirely, or they've been repaired or replaced. But if you hold it up and look at the whole thing, there's a through line, a design, even if imperfect, a memory even if faded, a story that still wants to be told. And God isn't just the one who sees the whole quilt. He's the one who's been stitching it alongside of you through every season, every patch, bright or broken. As Psalm 139 says, you hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. The same God who formed your inward parts also weaves through your story, seen and unseen. He is present every moment in this middle. Remembering who you were does not erase the uncomfortable nature of this moment. It doesn't erase the grief of past or present hurt, but it can reawaken hope, can light up curiosity about who you want to be. We've said that the in-between spaces are full of uncertainty and confusion. And looking back at parts of us that we still love but have gone dormant can give us something to focus on. The reclaiming of that thread can give some purpose to the in-between times. There's a meme that I've seen that says, from all of the media that I consumed growing up in the 80s, movies and comic books, I thought quicksand would be a much bigger threat in life than it has been. I think of this remembering as the way that you actually get out of quicksand. You move slowly, you redistribute your weight, and you hold an anchor that allows you to maneuver your way out. It's not a quick process. Remembering can be an anchor that gives you something to hold onto as you journey through the in-between and maneuver your way out. If this idea of remembering has stirred something in you, but you're not sure where to begin, here are 3 ways that creativity can help you reconnect with the parts of you that might feel a little bit far away or have gone dormant. First idea is to pick up an old hobby. Not to root your identity in exactly. Maybe it's painting or journaling or sewing or photography, but something that you used to do just for you. So you're not picking up for an audience or a goal or for posting or sharing. Dust it off, not to get good at it, but to spend time with a version of you who loved that thing for a reason. One of the first things they tell you in couples therapy is do the things that you used to do in the beginning. And so this is sort of along those lines. Dust off something that makes you feel like you and do it to reconnect with that person. Second, revisit a creative memory. Find a photo or a song or a recipe or even a scrap of fabric that connects you to a time when you felt most like yourself. And let that be a doorway, not into necessarily nostalgia or memory, but into looking for what matters to you still now. And third, make something just for remembrance. Write a letter to your past self. Create a collage of who you were at any given time in your life. Stitch a symbol, draw a timeline, not to go back necessarily, but to look at that person and say, you still matter. You mattered then, you still matter now. So these are not activities that I want you to do as performance. They're invitations to listen and reconnect, to carry something forward with care. And Jeremiah, God tells his people, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. So if you are walking through your own in-between right now, that crossroads, wondering what's next or who you are, may you be gentle with the questions. May you remember what is still true, and may you look for the good way and walk in it. God doesn't just dwell in finish lines. He meets us in the remembering, in the dust, in the thread, and the uncertain middle. So next week, we're going to dig into the next step in the framework, which is release, where we talk about the stories that we carry with us. And of course, I will be right here next Saturday on the porch. If you would like to come on back, I would love to have you. Until then, wherever your road takes you this week, may grace meet you there. All right, friends. I know there have been a couple comments, so let's see if I can figure it out. Oh, Tim. I love all of the R's. Alliteration is my friend. Okay, Brenda, this is a long one. Let me see if I can read it because I have trouble reading the small one. Praying scripture once a week with you is something that I have missed. Help me make it through the dark night of my soul. Now that I am through that time, I am stronger to face the trials of this word that the Lord gives me to do. Thank you. You're so welcome. That was that time doing that, praying together every week. That was really meaningful for me. I used to think about this. There's a couple minutes, when the timer's going before, gives just people time to get around and me to pray before we start. But I used to think in that time, and I probably said it during those broadcasts, that was a high honor. It was a privilege to be serving you in that way. Those of you who join me, it's still up. I have not taken any of those episodes down. So that Praying Scripture broadcast is still available on podcast. I think that it's interesting. I feel like that draw to be doing that again, but maybe not quite in the same way. So I'm not sure what to do with that. We'll find out. That's one of those things that's just kind of sitting there thinking about it. I've been working on a journal for Limina that is in this topic, this idea of transitions, like working. It's a creative journal. I thought it was going to be ready to put out into the world, into Amazon, and I'm having a problem with Amazon. So Amazon and I are discussing that journal right now. But in that process of doing that, I ran across some of my old work. I think the last book that we may have been going through, may have prayed through, may have been Esther. And I found the file that I had been building to turn those prayer times, or those praying through scriptures, into prayer journals available on Amazon as well. And so it kind of started me thinking about if that would be one of the directions that, as I'm thinking about this publishing, if I should work that in. So anyway, those are random thoughts, but I appreciate, Brenda, you saying that. I'm so grateful to know that it was meaningful for you and hopefully for others. It was an honor to do that. So happy Saturday. I hope that your upcoming week is beautiful, and I will see you next week with the next step in this process. Have a good week, friends.